what's up YouTube? Down the Smartphone Guy coming back at you with another video, and tonight I want to share with you my 48-hour impressions of this device right here. This is the LG Aristo 2. So last year I did a review of the LG Aristo, so this is LG's follow-up for metroPCS. It is a metroPCS exclusive device that right now you can actually pick up for free if you port in a line from another carrier. So I ported over a line from Cricket Wireless. I was able to pick this up for $62 out the door, so that includes taxes plus a month of unlimited service on metroPCS. So pretty solid deal for this device, but this is kind of one of those devices that you kind of wonder, like, why does this even exist? Because it doesn't really do much to improve on the LG Aristo of last year. So let's go ahead and talk about what all this thing has to offer, and let's turn this camera around. Alright, so here is the LG Aristo 2 in all of its glory. This is the box it comes in, and on the back of the box they were nice enough to include some of the features of the device. So of course we have 4G LTE, we have Android 7.1.2, so that is definitely one of the upgrades. You get a software update from last year's LG Aristo. We have a 5-inch HD IPS display, so that's 720p right there. And we have a 13 megapixel camera on the rear, 5 megapixel camera up front. We have a 16 gigs of onboard storage, so you get about 11 of that out of the box. You get 2 gigs of RAM and a 1.4 gigahertz quad-core Snapdragon 425 processor, and pretty much everything here is exactly the same as what you got last year, with the exception of the software. So that's kind of one of the reasons why I say this is kind of one of those phones that makes you shrug as to why they even put it out there. But we have a 2,410 milliamp hour battery, and of course you get all the goodies inside. So you get the charger, and it's not a quick charger, so in case you're wondering. But yeah, so here we go. This is the device itself. So again, 720p 5-inch display. We got our earpiece and that 5 megapixel camera up front. So pretty large bezels on both the top and the bottom, same as last year. Now this is one major change from last year, and that is the backing. So last year's backing definitely looked a lot cheaper. I will say that this year's backing does almost look like glass. So that's kind of cool. It kind of has that glassy look, but of course you can tell that it's a fingerprint magnet, whereas last year's had more textured, but it looked a little bit cheaper. Again, we got that speaker down there at the bottom back of the phone. So again, not a perfect, or not the ideal location for the speaker. We have micro USB again. We have a headphone jack, of course, and we have our microphone there and another microphone down here. Now, we can remove the back, of course, and that's where we're going to put in our SIM card, and then also our SD card right on top of it. Now, this is what looks like a fingerprint sensor, but again, this year it's also not a fingerprint sensor. It is just our power button. Now, one thing that they do talk about with this device is the fact that it comes with facial recognition. I can get that word out. Unfortunately, I don't think the facial recognition's worked all that well for me, to be honest with you. So obviously right now my face is being covered by the camera that I'm using, but it just hasn't been all that fantastic, so that's not something I would rely on. You're pretty much going to have to use a pin or a swipe or whatever it is that you want to use to unlock it, because the facial recognition is pretty hit or miss for me so far. So that is the build of the device. Let's go ahead and talk about performance so far. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Geekbench 4. So there you go, there's your Geekbench 4 score. So pretty much the same as what you got last year, because we have the same processor as last year, which is to say this thing actually performs fairly well. So it scores an 1840 on the multi-core score, 657 in the single core score. In terms of gaming, I've been playing NBA Jam on it, absolutely no problem. Social media so far, it does stutter every once in a while, of course, when you're like in Facebook Messenger and things like that. So some of the heavier apps, it will stutter just a little bit, but overall performance on this device is not too bad for a budget-friendly device. In fact, I would say that Snapdragon 425, even any phone in the 400 series with that Snapdragon, performs fairly decently. So that's something that you can kind of hang your hat on with this phone. Not that it's going to be amazing performance, but definitely not bad for a budget-friendly device. Alright, so now let's go ahead and jump into the camera and take a look at what all this thing has to offer. So first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and jump into the pictures that I took so far, just so you can get kind of an idea. Now I accidentally just shot a video, but yeah, picture quality hasn't been too disappointing so far. So obviously that 5 megapixel camera up front, it's not amazing, but it's definitely not bad either. Now it will actually light up the screen, so you can kind of see my son's face is a little lit up there, but yeah, overall picture quality hasn't been terrible on either the front or the rear, and some lower light settings as well. On the front and the rear we can shoot in 1080p. Obviously there's no image stabilization or anything like that, so we'll go ahead and take a look. So this is the front facing camera, so video resolution does go up to 1080p, and you of course can shoot in 720p as well. And we do have HDR available, and if I go ahead and turn it around, you can see that when we're shooting in video, we'll come right over here, you can see we get up to full HD again. So overall quality so far hasn't been too bad. It's certainly not amazing, and it's not going to compete with flagships by any means, but camera quality hasn't been terrible at all. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the battery on this phone. So we have a 2,410 milliamp hour battery, as you can see there, and it is removable, but I'm going to go ahead and keep it in there because I want to go ahead and show you what kind of battery life I've been getting so far. And I haven't been using it as my daily driver necessarily. I've been using it kind of as a secondary phone, but this is day 2. I'm at 49%. Obviously, if this is going to be your daily driver, you're going to get a little bit different usage out of it. So you can see it's been sitting idle, but I've been pretty impressed by the battery life so far. So it's only been an hour and 39 minutes of screen on time, and that's at 49%. So if you did the math, you're looking at about 3 hours of screen on time, but you have to remember that it basically sat idle for quite a while during that time. So if I go in here to phone idle, yeah, a day and 15 hours. So I've been using it off and on. So over 2 days, that means that it's definitely got some really good idle. So as far as the software is concerned on this device, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the software, and you can see that we're running Android 7.1.2 with the December security patch on the device. So that's actually not too bad. So we got Android Nougat on board, so no Android Oreo, unfortunately. And again, we have LG's stock software. So I will be the first to say that I'm not a huge fan of LG's software. One thing I do like is that it does give you the option to theme it out. So if you don't like the software and you don't like the icons, you can of course theme it out. You can of course put a third-party launcher on there if you want, if that's something that you choose. Now, one thing that you will notice is that I got a couple things on here that probably don't look normal out of the box. So one thing is I do have the app drawer, as you can see there. So I'm going to go through a couple of settings that you can tweak on this device that I think are very useful. And I do really like this gaming theme as well. So I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But first thing I want to talk about is how you get that app drawer if that's something you want. So you go into home screen and you're going to go into select home, and by default it starts out on home, but if you want the app drawer, you're going to have to go down here to home and app drawer. Now there is an easy home, that's basically like a super simple version of the software. It makes it very user friendly, so if you have somebody who doesn't necessarily feel comfortable with cell phones, then that's something you might want to check out for them. So it is very customizable, so that's nice about their software, but again, I'm just not a huge fan of LG's stock software. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. And then the other thing you'll probably notice is that my settings actually looks a little bit different. So this is the default. It's got the tab view, so we have network, sound and notification, display, and general. But if you click up here in those three little dots, you can get the list view, which is actually how I prefer it. So I prefer it just to be listed one by one, like you can see here. So that's just my preference. So if that's something you want, you can go into list view. Now, in order to use that gaming, like I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of things in here. So we have some gaming tools. So when you play, or when it'll automatically recognize when you're playing games, it'll give you a little gaming tool. That's kind of nice. And then we also have break time, which is kind of cool. And then we have game graphics. So it'll actually up the graphics on the phone when you're gaming, and it'll kind of reduce some of the things in the background in order to help out the graphics during the game. And I will say that gaming so far has been pretty good. As I mentioned, NBA Jam plays really well. I've only played a couple games on it, but all the games I've played so far have gone very, very smooth, so that is nice. So software, it's an okay software. Again, if you're used to LG software, you're probably going to like this. Now, last thing I want to talk about is the speaker. So again, the speaker is located on the bottom of the device, so not an ideal location, but let's go ahead and take a listen to it, see how it sounds. But to do that, I'm going to have to turn my microphone around, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so how does that speaker sound? Well, actually I'm kind of surprised at how loud this speaker is. It doesn't sound great, but it does get quite loud, so it's very tinny. There's definitely a lack of bass in the speaker, but it gets quite loud, so if that's something that you need, well, it's going to work fine for speakerphone because it's a pretty loud speaker overall. So, LG Aristo 2, is it something worth picking up? If you have the LG Aristo 1, well, I kind of have a hard time saying that, but there are some decent upgrades. So we do have a software update, we have a nice looking back here, we do have facial recognition, but again, I don't think that works very well for me personally. But overall, the LG Aristo was a pretty solid option at a very budget-friendly price, and this is a nice little upgrade to that device. And right now, if you port in, again, you can get it for free with metroPCS. So hopefully this video has been helpful. If there's anything I missed, go ahead and leave that down in the comment section. I'll try to get down there as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.